This episode contains discussions surrounding mental health. If at any point during the episode you or someone you know is in need of support, call 988 or visit iasp.info for help. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Make Mental podcast. By this point, we are well into season 3, and broken record me is going to say it one more time. We have such an incredible guest on today. Kamryn, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I know we've tried to set this episode up for a while now, and then in the last couple of days, we've kind of went through a little war of when we wanted to do this, and I think it's because we're both practicing good mental health techniques. And what I mean by that, because obviously you and I know, is both of us have our notifications off for a lot of our social medias, which was a weird adjustment for me at the beginning, but now I'm about a month and a half strong into it, and I'm learning how to forgive myself for not responding right away. But sometimes that does have a negative effect. I'm not going to sit here and say social media is all bad. That's how we communicate for this. But I'm just glad we finally got connected and are able to have a chance to talk and share your story with everyone who wants to listen.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to have reached out, and I think we have a lot to catch up on.
Yeah, for sure. So Cam and I, oh boy, see, I feel like I'm dating myself, but to a lot of people, we're still really young, so I won't do that. Was it 2018 was my first year at Oswego? Was that
Yep, my
yours?
first year was 2020.
2020. Oh God, so I am older than you.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, we met honestly right in the beginning of COVID. I
yeah,
know it's like everyone kind of uses that as like the milestone marker now in their lives of before and after COVID, but that's genuinely when we met. For listeners that don't know Kamryn, she was a member of the Oswego State women's hockey team for a few seasons and then transferred to Canton Kangaroos, right?
yep,
That is like one
yep.
of my favorite mascots for no reason, but she is going to share with us her healing process through OCD and anxiety and eventually ADHD and ADD as well. So again, we really appreciate you being open and honest with us, and I'm excited to catch up, and I'm excited to learn more about you and your mental health journey.
Yeah, I love opening up about the struggles that I've been through. I feel like it'll help other people who may have gone through similar situations.
Yeah, why is it so rewarding for you to open up about those struggles?
I think just because at the beginning, when I started noticing a lot of the signs, I was very closed off, and I think that I couldn't almost come to terms with what I had been going through. So I think that kind of just coming into terms with myself and just almost accepting um, who I am and the struggles that I've been through, I think have helped me mature a lot and have a different outlook on life.
Yeah, I think a lot of our guests who share, obviously it's pretty empowering for them to give their perspective and their story, but I don't think a lot of us admit that every time we share, while it may sometimes bring back a little trauma from the past, a lot of us have gotten to a point where it positively affects us more. And obviously, as you know, I'm a big proponent of doing things that positively impact you. So every time that you get to share, I'm excited for you. But I'm also, I can kind of relate it to myself because every time I jump on an episode, I can see myself, pieces of myself in the guests. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I went through a similar experience. Or no, I didn't do that. Like, tell me more. Do you want to start for us, at least to give us some context, with your childhood? Who was Cam growing up? Was she always into hockey? Could you play soccer? What else did you do? And then was mental health something that was discussed in your early childhood?
Yeah, so growing up, I have a twin brother, and I have two older sisters. So my brother and I were always very competitive with one another. Um, I think growing up, I was the more competitive one. I mean, I would do anything to win. I would cheat in board games. My brother and I would go in the backyard a lot, play one-on-one kickball, and I would cheat all the time just to win. But I've always been very competitive. But I think, I started realizing I had a lot of anxiety in middle school, but growing up, I think I really started to realize it was in high school. But I was a three-sport athlete year round. I played hockey year round and then softball and soccer as well. And I was pretty accomplished, I think, in soccer and softball. Hockey wasn't my best sport, but I decided to follow that path to lead me to college.
Yeah, I'm interested. How do you cheat in board games? You got to be pretty sly to do that.
I mean, honestly, anything like if it was, jumping head two spaces, I would jump head three, or I don't know, kind of just like manipulate it so I could win.
That's awesome. Take advantage of your brother's inability to count squares on a board.
Yeah. And he's the math
As
guy
what?
too.
As like a 7 year old probably.
Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious. I mean, we've all been there. Are you the youngest?
Yes.
Okay, so you understand. As the youngest, once you get a certain age, you can appreciate the competitive nature of your older siblings. But when you're in it, it pisses you off because you never win because they're just bigger, faster, stronger, a little smarter. You're always playing with their friends, hanging out with their buddies. But when you go back to your own age group, you really realize the positive side effects that that has. And it honestly didn't hit me until probably ninth grade that I actually became thankful for losing to them so many times. So I'm right there with you. If we can jump a couple spaces and learn how to be sly, then I'm all for it.
Oh yeah. I mean, growing up, like in the summer, my brother and I would go up to the soccer field every single day, and I would get so pissed off that he would win because he was just bigger, stronger, faster. But thankfully, I mean, it helped me so much that soccer season because I mean, I was playing up against someone that was bigger, stronger, and faster. I knew how to play against those type of people.
Yeah, and it's funny to look back too because I can conceptualize now like why I didn't understand as a 5, 10 year old, even up into my early teens, like why they wouldn't let me win or like why I was losing, honestly, at some points because I happened to be taller than my brothers by the time I was like 14. So I was like, wait a minute, I'm bigger, faster, stronger, but they're still smarter. They've been through it. I'm going to kind of jump super far ahead here, but then we'll come back to where we're at. Is there something that you think yourself at 40 years old will know that you wish your current self will know now? Kind of like when you're 7 that you had to cheat to win that board game.
Really good question. I think honestly, what I've been trying to praise and kind of remind myself, and my coach said it, one of our last games of the season, is just be where your feet are. I think that I look so I look so far ahead into the future, and oh, I can't wait to do this, or this is coming up. I'm really nervous about that, but I never really realize what's in front of me. So I think things like that, like looking back into my childhood, I wish that I could just go back and take another minute and just experience it and have more fun.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, that's a very good point. Be where your feet are, and I think that's important too because a lot of times we go through life like, all right, you get through preschool, you go to kindergarten, get through elementary school, go to middle school, high school. Like you have a very structured. You're always looking to the future, which is good to a certain extent. Excuse me, but you can't rush yourself through that. And I think take understanding that things take time is probably the toughest concept for me personally to grasp. Does that sit with you at all in terms of patience and understanding that things truly do take time and there's absolutely nothing we can do about it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big advocate on trusting the process. I mean, I feel like a lot of people say that, but it's true. I mean, last spring, I had to reach a certain weight for our squat test. And all summer long, I was very nervous about it, but I trusted the process and I was able to crush it this fall. So continuing to just trust the process and, slow things down a little bit, appreciate the little things, I think is something that I've really been trying to focus on a little bit more.
Go Global is a free-flowing technology company that handcrafts, embellishes, and manufactures garments and accessories. Designed on the principles of people, places, and possibilities, Go Global reimagines fashion and is inspired by you, the people of the world. Intentionality, that's one of our buzzwords right now at Make Mental. I think I bring it up just about every episode, but again, I bring it up every episode because it truly matters. There are decisions in life where it's like, okay, do I put on a red t-shirt or a green t-shirt? Like, it really doesn't matter. But most of the decisions you make concerning your mental and physical well-being do matter. And I'm not saying that to scare anybody, because I know it can be scary and you will fail. I failed today. All right. I had McDonald's cheat day on a Friday. I had McDonald's for the first time in forever. And okay, before we go on, this is a side tangent, but I have to let you know there is like anime writing on the McDonald's for the next month. Did you know that? It's like an upside down W. This is like shameless marketing for McDonald's. Didn't even plan on it, but it's an upside down W. It says like McDonald's, and then it's got some sort of anime writing down the side. And I thought I was tripping. I was like, did I go through McDonald's withdrawal? What is going on? I texted my friends. They were like, what is this? But anyways, that's how my brain works. My cheat day was today, but understanding that and like I said, I'm not saying to scare anyone. So if you can understand that, if you do trust the process, like if you have a plan in mind, if you are very intentional about the steps in those plan, or in that plan rather, then you will get to where you're supposed to be. And I think that's a key point as well, because where you're supposed to be is not always, or excuse me, you'll get to where you're meant to be, not to where you want to be. That was the phrase that we started using, or I started using personally, is everyone wants to be at the top. Like, that's just the way it goes. It's just human nature. But not everyone's made for the top. Does that speak to you at all? Like ending up where you're meant to be, not necessarily where you want to be?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my process with transferring from Oswego to Canton really resonates with that saying. Because when I first transferred, it was a very late process. I figured out that I kind of wanted to transfer in July, and we obviously go back to school in August. So that was a very late process for me, and it was really stressful. But then once I was able to move into Canton, I freaked out. I didn't like not being in control of just every little aspect. I didn't know many people. I didn't like the thought of starting over. So I kind of just freaked out and I was like, okay, I'm going to go back to Oswego for the semester, kind of figure out where I want to go and where I'm supposed to end up at, and then go from there. So I took the semester off. I think it was last year, the first semester. I took that semester off from hockey and then really realized that this is what I wanted to do. This is where I wanted to be. I came here and haven't really looked back since.
Yeah, I want to kind of pinpoint something you said there, the fear of starting over. And I think that's a very common fear. Again, you see it throughout your entire life, whether it is changing schools, whether it's looking for a new job, switching majors, career path, relationships. I mean, you name it, there's some element of starting from the ground level again. What was that like? I mean, you said you took a semester off from the sport you love, but it had to be more than just that. Can you let us know like a little bit as to what you went through, and how you might have gotten through it?
Yeah, looking back now, I'm glad that I went through it, but at the time, it was the worst experience I feel like I had gone through at that point. But yeah, so when I decided that I wanted to transfer, I think my parents were big advocates on slowing down because I was trying to rush the process so much. So when I transferred here, I had only been here for a week and I started freaking out because I didn't want to start over. I didn't want to almost have to like navigate another way around campus or kind of fit in with a new team. So I went back to Oswego, took the semester off, and that was very, very challenging, like mentally. Um, I stopped eating, I stopped working out, I would really just lay in bed all day and just work on homework and hang out with my dog. But looking back now, obviously it wasn't a healthy way to cope with everything. I know now better ways to cope with it. But I mean, like it was pretty scary. I had lost a lot of weight. I had a lot of people reaching out to me. Um, and it is sad because I did miss out on a semester of hockey. Um, and I mean, I've played that since I was 2 years old, but I think during like looking back now, I think that I needed that time to just slow down and stop trying to like rush the process and kind of just appreciate every little thing that I have.
Yeah, I appreciate you again for being honest and sharing that, and understanding that you can forgive yourself for not knowing in the moment the best way to handle something, right? I mean, that's the tough part about, I mean, mental health, but just life in general is understanding that you can't get mad at yourself for something you didn't know. And I think that's so tough because like when you look in retrospect, it's like, okay, I should have known that. I should have seen that staying in my room wasn't healthy, but my dog was there. So like I love my dog. Like there are those little things that keep you there, and it's a very difficult path to navigate. Were there moments where you just were like, you knew you weren't supposed to, like, that actually, how am I going to phrase this? Was there ever a moment that you questioned your decision? I mean, I'm sure there were plenty, but like, was there one moment in particular that stands out to you that you're like, I wish I never reached out to my new school in the first place, or I wish I chose them in the first place?
Um, Honestly, yeah. So I had reached out to a former coach when I was taking the semester off at Oswego. He is probably one of the best coaches I've ever had, and he's like a dad figure for me. Our families are very close. His name's Coach Ahern. So he coaches the Oswego um, men's varsity hockey team there. And I had asked him, if I could help out a little bit, just be a volunteer coach. And being on the ice every day and being around them, and they really just valued like what I had to say, and I loved it. I loved being able to just give them my knowledge on the game and help them grow as individuals. So I related to them on that level. But one moment in particular, they had a game, and I remember sitting outside their locker room, and it just clicked, and I was like, I should have stayed at Canton. I should have stuck it out. But I really wanted to go back, so I reached out to the coach, Coach Grant. And so I reached back out to her, and she set up a phone call, and we chatted, and thankfully she took me back. But yeah, I think that was the moment that I kind of realized I needed to get back into it.
Yeah, what were you feeling physically in that moment? Were you upset? Were you confused, anxious? Were you happy that you finally came to a conclusion? What was going through your mind when you were in this moment?
I was more relieved than anything because I think I had spent that whole semester thinking my hockey career was over. I had just been beating myself up for it, questioning my decisions, questioning just everyone around me that had tried giving me advice on what to do and how to handle the situation. But I felt more relieved than anything. And then the anxiousness started kicking in, just waiting for an answer. But once I had been given the answer, I was incredibly relieved. And it was almost like a big weight had lifted off my shoulders.
Yeah, I often describe moments like that of the weight being lifted from your shoulders up into your head. And I think that sounds crazy, right? Like now that I listen to myself say it actually out loud, but it's true. When you're going through a stressful situation and all that pressure is in your chest, even all the way into your stomach, like just sitting is like a pit in your throat. When that's gone and you're able to breathe again, it doesn't matter as much to you, or at least to me at the time, that the weight is shifted in my head because I know I can work through those mental hurdles. I have done enough work with myself. I didn't used to be. I'll make that very clear. I used to struggle with those mental hurdles. but I've done enough work in myself to understand that if I can get that physical anxiety from my body to my brain, that eventually it will just, I don't know, I like to picture things, it'll just steam right out my ears, as ridiculous as that sounds. D- does that work for you, moving the physical symptoms of anxiety away from your body and up towards your brain, or do you like to just get rid of them altogether? Because I feel like, again, mental health is so personal. This is just how it works for me. I feel like if I skip that process of the weight being from moved from my chest to my head, that I don't fully understand what went on. Do you have a certain process that works for you to navigate these things?
Um, I like to describe myself as a head case, as bad as that sounds, because a lot of the times I am so far in my own head. But I realized that journaling and therapy helped me a lot with that. I'd rather have it be in my head than physically because I can talk about it, I can write about it, think about it. I like to write down a lot of pros and cons lists. I'm a big advocate for like to-do lists. I just like getting it all out there. So I think therapy definitely helps with that a lot.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Therapy was like my crutch for a few years, and I still go. I just don't go as often because I like to practice the tools that I learned, but it took a while to get there. A couple therapists and a couple big moments in my life. But I want to kind of rewind back here. McDonald's got me away from a couple of my initial questions. But I want to rewind a little bit to where you started to notice I guess, we don't notice a lot of our mental symptoms until they become physical. And you mentioned you can look back now and see some of them in your middle school career and your middle school timeline, but it wasn't really until high school when I think you mentioned it was anxiety and OCD at that point in your life when they presented themselves. That can be scary. Can you walk us through what that's like? Because again, looking back at it, I noticed them now in my middle school and high school self, but I didn't really experience them until later on. What is it like to experience that type of emotions at such a young age?
Um, I guess the one word I can use to describe it is just a heavy feeling. I didn't really know how to navigate it. Thankfully, I have two older sisters that have kind of gone through similar situations. I have an older sister that also deals with anxiety and OCD. So as I've grown up, I've been able to lean on her a little bit more, but I think that she didn't want to talk about it with me because kind of how you said, like she didn't want to scare me. Um, but there's one example that sticks out in my head with my OCD. We were in a state championship game. I think I was a sophomore in high school, and I'm big on just like routines and numbers and the way things feel, I guess. Um, so when I get ready for hockey, I'm very what's the word I'm trying to look for?
Like
Super
ritualistic almost?
superstitious.
There we go.
I'm very superstitious. To the point where it started giving me anxiety before games. Um, if I didn't do a certain step in my routine warming up, my entire game was ruined. So getting ready and putting my equipment on, I would get ready left to right, and I I couldn't remember if I had tied my skates left to right. So I took my skates off and I put them back on and retied them back up right before the game. And then in between the second and the third period, we had gotten off the ice for the ice to be flooded. And going back out, I remember all the parents were sitting and standing right there as we were going out. And when I had not put my gloves on left to right, I immediately noticed it and I was like, oh, we're going to lose the state championship game. And I remember my mom standing right there and I had taken my gloves off and put them back on and it didn't feel right. So I had taken them off and put them back on 8 more times because it just didn't feel right. And my mom finally grabbed my hands and she's like, "You're fine." just go play your game. And I think that's an example that sits in my head a lot as as I dealt with OCD growing up.
Empire Specialty Printing is a family owned and operated screen printing and promotional products company. ESP has been in business for over a decade by providing consistent and high quality service. Products include custom hoodies, shirts, hats, business supplies, and much, much more. Whether it's for a family party, school team, group, or corporate apparel, Empire Specialty Printing has what you need to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful because anyone who goes through OCD can almost pinpoint that feeling of heaviness and then nervousness and then chaos that ensues. And I've spoken about it openly on podcasts before. Like, I have OCD as well, and I joke every time and say my mom will tell you that's not true because my room is a mess, although it's not today. But it's more the compulsions that I think is the misconception of OCD. It's like you didn't want to take your gloves off 8 times. You just didn't know any other way. Like your brain was telling you to do it and your body responded until an outside force who you trusted, your mom, was like, okay, I love you, but what are you doing? Basically, like you need to get yourself under control. Um, have you been able to, and I hate the word control, but have you been able to recognize your OCD compulsions since? And if so, have you been able to kind of mitigate what happens when they present themselves?
Yeah, my therapist is she's given me a lot of different tasks to try and do throughout the day to just ease my mind and just make me feel more in control of myself. Um, when I started going to therapy, I think it was my sophomore year, second semester, um, she had diagnosed me with ADHD and ADD. So I got medicated for that. And oddly enough, it helped with my OCD because I had to focus more on the task at hand rather than outside things that I didn't necessarily need to think about. Um, so it definitely helped with like procrastination and, turning the light on and off a certain amount of times or making sure my door was locked. Whereas, like, I like to say I was dialed in, but I was. I knew exactly what I was doing at that moment that I didn't need to check several times, which it was a good feeling, but it definitely helps to go to therapy and give those tasks a try to see what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, and I'm curious to know if your experience with therapy was like this. Did you have to clear up space in your mind in order to tackle your OCD and your anxiety and your ADHD and your ADD? Because that was a mouthful. That was like half the alphabet for me to say. But I know a lot of people go to therapy wanting to tackle a specific issue or a specific struggle they have in their life. Did you go for your anxiety in your OCD, or did you go for something completely different and then it just freed up the mental capacity for you to work on the deeper root of the problem?
Honestly, I started going for my anxiety because at the time I wasn't enjoying hockey as much as I know that I normally do. So I wanted, not that I wanted to change necessarily like change my perspective, but I wanted to see like what an outside perspective would do for me. I had tried therapy once before, it didn't really work, and so I was scared to give it a try. Um, so yeah, she definitely did help me change my perspective because at the time I was just so in my own head, like, oh, I know I'm right about this, or this is how I feel, and I know it's not going to change. So she definitely did help me change my perspective. It was nice. And then it kind of just led to other things. And I mean, in high school, I had a teacher that had asked if I'd ever been tested for ADHD, and I said no. And so I had told my therapist, I'm struggling with motivation in school. I just feel like I can't do any homework. So she asked if it was motivation or concentration. And I think I told her, I was like, I think it's more concentration. So she tested me for both ADD and ADHD, and I scored perfectly on both tests. So that was nice, to know that this is my normal and I have to embrace it. And there's different ways that I can tackle those struggles. So it was definitely relieving.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting that you went to therapy and then were still maybe a little nervous to go back after knowing what it was all about. Did you have a negative first experience with therapy, or was it just not for you at the time? And how did you tell yourself, like, hey, I want to go back?
I think it was just that therapist just wasn't for me. I think I was looking for something different. I wanted a little bit more guidance than what I had received. So I felt like all I did at my first therapy session was just talk, and I didn't really receive anything back, which is kind of what I was looking for. Whereas my new therapist now is it's just a constant conversation back and forth, which is what I was looking for. So that definitely helps with the process.
Yeah, I always used to say therapy was like a relationship, like dating, but I've since changed my language because it was brought to my attention that some people like to remain single. And again, that was not a perspective that I had actually thought about, but I took it seriously, right? Because if I'm in the space of trying to better someone else's mental health, I want to make it as relatable as possible. So I say now, therapy is like eating food because it's delicious, number one, but there are so many flavors to choose from, right? If you aren't craving McDonald's and you hate junk food, you can go have an apple or a banana. But if you don't like fruit, maybe you can have some like there's so many different therapies and methods for healing out there that just because one doesn't work for you doesn't mean you should not at least consider trying another. And again, I choose my words very carefully as they do matter because you need to know ahead of time to a certain extent what may or may not be right for you. But when it comes to therapy, there's really, in my opinion, in my experience, and I'm assuming yours as you're sharing, there's no harm in trying because much like food, if you don't eat, things become difficult. Well, you shouldn't settle for your mental health either. If you don't talk to someone, if you don't journal, if you don't try something to better your mental health, things become difficult. And I say you, but I'm speaking to everyone in general. You deserve to have a life of health and wellness, whether that's physical and mental both to your body and brain's fullest capacity. So I now say therapy is like eating food, and it's way more fun to say than dating someone. So
I think that's a perfect comparison because I think, the physical and the mental well-being of someone, it goes hand in hand to make someone whole. So if you don't have one, you're not going to have the other. So I think that's a really good comparison.
yeah, and if you're hungry, you're not just and you have the means to eat food, you're not just going to sit there and starve, right? You're going to go get a different food or you'll go back to your comfort food. You should be able to do that with your mental wellness, right? If you don't feel like going to therapy that weekend, okay, no one's going to tell you you have to even though they might suggest it strongly. Well, you could go back to your comfort food of journaling. I know you mentioned you like to do that. You could go for a walk sometimes, just getting outside. Like that's what excites me so much about options to better your mental health is that there just is so many that once you are an active participant in your recovery journey and you figure out what works for you, you can bounce back and forth, you can end one, you can start one again, and it almost becomes like this challenge of okay, can I take the next step? Can I get rid of this step? Like, do I need this anymore? If I don't need it for 6 months, am I going to need it again? Like, it becomes this wonderful puzzle of who you are. Um, are there a lot of pieces to your puzzle, or are you therapy, journaling, and ADHD medication, or is there like are you like a 500-piece puzzle?
I mean, I feel like it depends on the day, honestly. Different days, I'll do like a nice little brain dump at the beginning of my day and just try and make a to-do list, and I will make it excessively long to the point where I know it's not going to all be done, but and then throughout the day, I kind of just look at the essential things that need to be done. And then there's other days where I just like to lay in bed and not do anything, and I feel productive on different days. However, I feel like I need to feel that day. So today, I knew that I wanted to sleep in, and I needed to get more rest, so I did that. Whereas other days, I need to get up at a specific time in the morning, like 9:30, to feel productive going throughout the day.
Need a tow? Top Shot Transport is the place to go. From cars to machinery, heavy equipment to general freight, Top Shot Transport will give you the best rate. Top Shot Transport is fully licensed and ready to tow your stuff anywhere. Email topshottransport1@gmail.com for more information.
Yeah, I appreciate that too, that you say it's day by day, because that couldn't be more true. Excuse me again. This tea has got me burping a little bit. I don't know why. Um, I appreciate the willingness to admit that what your plan looked like yesterday might look totally different than what your plan looks like in a week from now, but your end goal is the same. And I think that's what's important to realize, is the end goal of bettering yourself. And clearly now you got to a space where bettering those around you is in the cards. That's what truly matters. You can look towards the future while still having your feet planted in the present. And I think that's when true growth and true progress is made. But I wanted to go back to your to-do list that was probably longer than your Christmas list as a kid. I find this very interesting because as I stare at mine right now, this is the first day that I think there's 15 slots on my to-do list. One of them is blank, and I didn't realize it until you actually drew my attention to a to-do list. I used to do this thing where I described it as setting the basketball hoop to 8 feet. So it was still a challenge to dunk the ball, but I still know I could. So I could give myself that feeling of I accomplished something. Well, now I kind of do the opposite. I think like you're doing. I give myself a lot to do, knowing that I won't accomplish it all, because I am someone who struggles with people pleasing, with just overcommitting, with saying no. So like I'm trying to overcommit to myself so I have no other time to get those, and I'll use them, for me, bad habits of like toxic empathy. If you watch other episodes, I explain that. But or people pleasing. How do you forgive yourself, or how do you, well, maybe I won't ask you, won't pigeonhole you to a question. How do you forgive yourself for not accomplishing every single thing on your to-do list? Because again, me personally, as someone with OCD, if I don't get every single one of those check marks off, I'm like already writing it onto the next page.
Yeah, I do the same exact thing. But I mean, for example, I've been putting off cleaning my car, which I know it desperately needs to be done, but I'd rather do it when it's a nice day out and I can do it early in the morning and then I can go enjoy it. So I kind of like to reward myself throughout the day, whereas if I clean my room, I can kind of lay down in my bed and just enjoy it. But I like I struggle with overcommitting as well and people pleasing. I hate the fact of disappointing people. So I think trying not to disappoint myself with little things, just trying to let things go. So if I don't get one thing done, just move it to the next day. Don't worry about it. So I like to say the sun will rise again. So if I don't get it done today, I'll just do it tomorrow.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to celebrating and being grateful for what you have and what you've already accomplished. If you have 10 things on your to-do list and you do 7, that's, you're almost at the bottom of the to-do list. That's pretty dang good. Most people don't even get 2 things done, right? Or if you have 2 things on your to-do list and you get 1 done, well, you got half of it done. Whatever that starting point looks like for the individual, I think it's important at first to celebrate what you have done and be grateful for what you have gotten done, rather than focus on what you haven't done. And again, it's this huge spider web of just everything's interconnected with your mental and physical health. I'm just going to throw this out there and we'll see if it sticks to the wall. I notice that if I get up and do some, like right away, like just get up and go downstairs and either make my breakfast or wash my face or brush my teeth, like just get up rather than hit snooze, that's usually the first thing on my to-do list. And if I don't check that off, the rest of my to-do list for the day is just in shambles. It used to be get up and check my phone, but I know how bad that is for me now, so I don't do that. Do you have something every morning that you get up and you look forward to doing? And I apologize if it is check your phone. That would not be good.
No, I've been trying to the first 20 to 30 minutes that I wake up. I don't like to check my phone. I mean, I'll check it to see if I miss anything important, like a text from my mom or like my coach or something, but um, I take my dog outside and I like to sit on my stairs on my porch and just feel the sun for a little bit and he can run around as much as he pleases. And then I like to get upstairs in my room and immediately I like to make my bed. And I watched a TED talk one time and I think he was a Navy SEAL or something, but he had talked about making your bed and it just being a successful day. You get one thing done. So I like to just do small little tasks throughout the day that I'll feel, put together or successful in a little bit. So I've been trying to do small little habits to help add up throughout the day.
Yeah, his I think his name was William McRaven. He was you were right. He was a soldier, and he has a book called Make Your Bed. So yes, you're 100% right, and I think it's interesting because you're probably like the fourth or fifth person to come on the podcast and just mention making your bed. So obviously there is some power in it. Um, I had a thought that I was going to ask you, and it just completely slipped my mind. So oh, okay, so say this. Say you get up and you don't make your bed, you check your phone, you eat 8 pancakes even though you're on a strict diet for hockey, you are screaming at your dog to take a shit and they're just not going. Like you're doing everything you can in your power to make it a good day, but your brain is just like, Cam, hell no, not today. We're going on vacation. What now? How do you forgive yourself for spiraling into old habits, or do you just let it happen? Like what happens when your dog doesn't take a shit? I guess that's where my brain went.
Um, that's a really tough question. Honestly, I've been trying to not let the little things ruin my day, and I don't like to stick on to one thing and just have it snowball. So, I mean, if my morning does go down the drain, I like, okay, this is a reset. Let's just, now I start the day. And if I do get upset at my dog or anyone, I always like to remind myself that this is everyone's first time living. It's everyone's first experiences or whatever the case is. So I always like to remind myself I have to be a little bit easier on myself, on my dog, everyone else around me, and just give everyone else a little bit more grace, including myself.
Yeah, two things here I think with that statement. One, how many times do you allow yourself to hit reset during the day? Is it infinite? Are you like, all right, I'm at 10 times, like I gotta go journal or something? Like what is your point where you're like, I've reset too many times. It's a serious problem here.
Honestly, as many times as I need to.
Hmm.
If I have to reset, say 10 times throughout the day, I'll just use that as a learning experience for the next day, what to do, what not to do. But I've been trying to journal more in the morning so that I can just have a brain dump and start my day from there and just be nice and relaxed and get whatever I need to out on that paper rather than at night and just have it build up thoughts right before bed. So I find that the change in my habits recently, I've been trying to think more of myself, what I can do more for myself, mentally, physically, emotionally, just to help throughout the day.
Yeah, super important point you bring up there. And I don't know, I'm kind of a nerd for this stuff, so I do an obnoxious amount of reading and an obnoxiously small amount of action. It feels like sometimes when it comes to my mental health, although I should probably give myself some more grace on that. Your unconscious and your conscious mind are again deeply connected, and I think it's beautiful that you take time to journal in the morning instead of at night. And again, if it works for people differently, fantastic. I am not the little guy running your brain, so you have to do what's right for you. But I've noticed a lot of my friends and a lot of people we've spoken to and a lot of accomplished psychologists and professors who do this for a living, they say that whatever you're thinking about when you go to bed, or the with like the last hour or hour and 15 minutes, I don't know exactly, we'll just go with the longer time period to be safe. So the last hour and 15 minutes of what you do before bed and your conscious awake state makes up at least half of your sleep state, whether you know it or not. Like, which I think is bizarre because a lot of times I'm sitting there playing Call of Duty. So now when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, what was I thinking about all night? Like, was I winning? Was I losing? Was I screaming at my brother for not helping me? Like, what was going on? So now I still do, right? Like, I still indulge in that fun activity of playing video games with my friends. But I try to at least take the last 15 minutes to put my phone down, maybe practice meditation, read a book. And again, I fail more times than I succeed at that practice. But I notice that when I accomplish that practice of being present, being calm, being grateful, whatever my goal is for the end of that evening, I wake up so much more refreshed the next day. Obviously, you like to journal in the morning. Do you think that journaling in the morning helps your nighttime routine? Because we know that nighttime routine helps morning. Is there that reverse effect?
Yeah, so in the morning I journal. I kind of just like write to myself. And then at night, right before bed, I mean, I see it on TikTok all the time, but they just say like put your house to sleep. So I like to, clean up the dishes. I like to put my shoes away. I'll clean up my room from whatever mess I made that day. It just makes me feel more put together that I'm ready for the next day. And then this year I started bullet journaling. So that was one of my New Year's resolutions, is to just keep up with that. So I log how many hours I slept the night before, what my mood was for that day, my highlight of the day, just little things like that. I think it helps me kind of process how the day went and how I can move forward tomorrow.
Yeah, cleaning meditation is a practice, whether you know it or not. And it's kind of cool to think about because you can start off, I mean, no one wants to hear, go clean your room. Like, that's not going to lend you to meditation. But if you decide to clean your room and, like, okay, you're neatly lining up your shoes, you're reorganizing, you're making your bed because you forgot to in the morning, or any of those practices, you oftentimes just spend some time with your internal self and your inner voice. A lot of times your inner voice can be negative. But if you can learn to, I hate to say silence that voice, because sometimes the inner critic is necessary and alerts you of some pretty important stuff. But how can you decipher, maybe through those practices, whether it's meditative cleaning, whether it's morning journaling, whatever, how can you, or how do you personally decipher what you're supposed to hear and take from the inner critic and what you're supposed to just be like, nah, you're an idiot, dude?
So I think I do clean meditate all the time. I mean, I did it yesterday right after my class. I had a big presentation yesterday and I did it as soon as I got home. I let all my thoughts just I call it a brain dump all the time, but I mean, I will just let whatever thought needs to run through my head, and then whenever I'm done cleaning, it's okay. I'm done with that. Like, just let it go. You're done. But then I kind of find it rewarding that I let myself just express whatever it needed to, and then I got that task done as well. So, I mean, it might not be the healthiest thing to let the negative thoughts run through my head, but I find that if I'm doing something that I would feel that rewards me, so cleaning my room, I'll, I think it goes hand in hand personally.
College can be a roller coaster, but Zant's got your back. First session, absolutely free. After that, just $25. Easy on the pocket, heavy on support. Stress, burnout, addiction, or trauma. Zant's expert coaches are here for you. Download the app, kick stress to the curb, and own your college journey. Your mental health, your way. Zant. Download and thrive today.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of what happens when you're doing the dishes stays when you're doing the dishes. Kind of little spin off there. Like, whatever conversations I have with myself, whether I need to, I mean, probably immaturely cuss out someone to myself or congratulate myself or just like whatever I need to say while I'm doing the dishes, I take that time to either be peaceful, be angry, be present. Like, that's 20 minutes I know that I'm going to have every day to just use however I want to use. And I think that's powerful. And it can kind of connect to your story because, I mean, way back at the beginning, you talked about just starting over and just doing these hard resets. And it's okay to do them during your day. And I know when we use the term hard reset, people often think about like turning your phone all the way on and off and like losing things, but that doesn't happen unless you tell it to. Like, if you need to hard reset your, I mean, your iPhone, for example, all the memory and data stays in there. You can do that with yourself, right? You can be low on battery. You can just be in panic mode where again, I'm very big on visuals. If you get one little drop of water on your screen, every single application starts opening, and you send text to people you haven't texted in years. Like, your body is capable of doing that. So is your mind. You can be so good for so long, and maybe not let your compulsions take over, or you've made your bed for 10 days in a row, or you whatever. You can do that hard reset, and it does. It all goes back to slowing down, being where your feet are, appreciating what you've already accomplished, the 7 days of making your bed, not focusing on the one that you haven't, being aware of it, that inner critic, that mistake, that slip up, if you will, but knowing that end goal, or knowing that you've already reached the end goal once, it's capable to get back there. Um, I did want to take a second though to just congratulate you, because I don't know whether you knew it or not. From the beginning of your story to the end of your story, at least the way my OCD filled brain works, is like, you've come such a long way. And I think when we talk about ourselves a lot, we don't like to admit that we've come a long way. You went from literally top to bottom, left to right, gloves on and off, gloves on and off, gloves on and off, to, okay, like, so what? I didn't make my bed this morning. Whereas before, maybe you would have had to made your bed from left to right. I don't know. I just wanted to take a second, whether you realize or not, and just say that we're proud of you at Make Mental for doing that, and it's just fantastic. But as we've heard, it didn't come without struggle and sacrifice. What was the biggest moment, if there was one, or maybe it was just a compilation of smaller moments, but what was like that one point in your self-discovery journey, whether, and you might not have had it yet, so I should throw that out there, that you were just like, wouldn't this just be easier if I just accepted like who I was and not wanted to get better, and just be like, okay, like whatever, this is just me. Because this is where it gets really tricky and sticky. You can just say like, okay, this is just me, and then get help for your ADD, your ADHD, your OCD, what have you. And you can, it sounds better in my head, but every time I try to say it, it doesn't sound very good. So give me a second. It's like, it's one thing to just say, okay, it's me, and roll over and be a bump on a log, which sometimes that leads you to realizing that you need to get some help. But it's another thing to say, okay, it's me, let me embrace it. Let me become the most full, happy, healthy person I can be. What was that like for you? And again, if you haven't had it yet, maybe you'll have to come back on. But what was that moment like for you when you were just like, man, I just want to roll over and not do this anymore?
Well, first of all, thank you for congratulating me. That made me emotional. Um, I think that I kind of just came to terms with who I am as a person, and I've I've dealt with these struggles for so long that I felt like it was time to stop making excuses for myself, and this is my normal. This is who I am. It's not going to change who I am, but it's something that I can help embrace, and it'll I like to look at there's a silver lining in everything. Um, it makes me unique. I think everyone has their own little quirk that makes them unique, but I think that um, I started living by the saying, the less you give a damn, the happier you will be. So I try to not take the little things as harsh as I would have in the past. And I think that's definitely helped my mental state, rather than just sitting on it for hours or days at a time, just accepting what will be. And I kind of just, I don't know. I kind of, I think therapy definitely helped with that, honestly. Just realizing that certain things probably won't change, and I can't control the uncontrollable. So I can only control the things that I can. So mainly just focus on that, I guess.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think understanding what you have control over, what you don't have control over, what you might have control over someday, what you can like control, and self control in a sense is a powerful tool when sharpened and used correctly. But that's such a, I mean, we could spend a whole nother hour talking about controlling the controllables, which who knows. But I I guess my question was more along the lines of like when you were, and again, if you don't want to answer, no problem, but when you were in your bed just down in the dumps wishing things were different, like what, you kind of mentioned it. You were like, okay, it's time to get help, but like when you are in such a state of just confusion, lost, scared, just blah is the only way I know how to describe it. Like there's really no vocabulary for it. What drove you finally to say, all right, I need to go get help again?
Honestly, I think it was I had come home for Thanksgiving, and my parents kind of sat me down and asked me how I was, and I lied and said that I was fine, and then they asked again, "No, how are you?" And I just remember breaking down to them, and my dad kind of mentioned that he could tell I had been losing a lot of weight because he had hugged me and I felt smaller. So I think that seeing my parents, how scared they were, not necessarily how much they cared, because I know how much they cared, but I think how scared they were, and they didn't really know how to help me because, growing up in their generation, it was different, but um, I think they were more scared than anything because they didn't know how to help me. So I think not only I know I wanted to help them, but I also needed to help myself. So I set up an appointment with my doctor. I talked to her about it, and she helped me find my therapist now. And ever since then, I've been incredibly grateful for my parents, although it was a very hard discussion. And being vulnerable is very hard because you don't know how the other person is going to react, but sometimes it is worth it.
Yeah, kudos for your parents for being consistent on that. And I know it couldn't have been easy for them either. And it's definitely not easy when you're the one having to look out for your friends and stuff, but it is definitely something that just has to be done. There's no other way around it. I'd rather someone be angry at me. I'd rather someone, I don't know, just cry on my shoulder. I'd rather them tell me 1,000 times that they're okay, but deep down inside, really appreciate that someone's checking on them. Like, I don't ever need to know their story. I just need them to know that someone cares about it, should they be ready to share it. And the happiest people sometimes are the ones that are struggling the most. And the person that I go back to quite often is Robin Williams, just because he's so well known. He said that it didn't matter how many people were around him, he just felt alone. Like people were checking in on him. And unfortunately, that is a whole nother topic that people with that lifestyle endure. But it's not to say that everyday people don't endure that either, right? Like you and I were surrounded by loving families that we know care, but sometimes the pressure of life, the stress of life is just a lot. It just is. And there are days where someone asks me if I'm okay, and I'm just like, yeah, get out of my face. Like, why'd you ask me? That was offensive. But that's what I'm saying. I'd rather someone be angry at me and know that I care rather than not show them that I care at all and have something very unfortunate happen. And yeah, so again, kudos to your parents for being persistent on that. And I again want to point out the fact that even though you knew that your family cared, even though they asked you pretty directly, which again, you have to know what works for you and your family. I don't, I'm not going to suggest that. I'm not going to suggest it, but you still told them that you were okay. The people that you love the most and the people that love you the most. That's how tricky of a discussion mental health is. But at the same time, that's how beautiful of a discussion mental health is, because once you learn how to leap over that hurdle of denying yourself and those around you the best version of you, my goodness, it's just a whole different world. And I'm still going through it. So I've only got a glimpse of this world. It's just, I don't know. I can't help but smile. Um, do
Yeah,
you have any
it's
advice
a
for
beautiful
someone?
thing.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for someone who's like, they got this 10-foot wall in front of them. They're ready to climb it, but they're just scared.
I always say the sun will rise again tomorrow. Um, you really find out the people that are meant to be in your life and that will positively affect you by talking about those things, by being vulnerable, whether it is mental health or another topic of discussion. But you really do find out the people that are meant to be in your life. And I've had some pretty hard, I guess, like friend breakups, you could say, with people, but those weren't the people that were meant to be in my life, and that's okay. I am grateful for the time that I spent with them, but maturing and realizing that they aren't good for me or whatever the case is, I think that's really good. But also going back to the discussion with my parents too, I think another thing you had asked earlier, something that had triggered my thoughts with, okay, yeah, I do deal with anxiety in high school was, um, I think I was 15, I think in 2007, yeah, 2017. Um, my best friend had committed suicide. And I think that was the first time I'd ever really dealt with someone struggling with mental health. I had never really known anything about that. Um, and it is an unfortunate circumstance, but at the same time, like I am grateful for the people that I was surrounded with because it is okay to struggle with mental health and it is okay to talk about it. You don't have to sit there and struggle by yourself. So I think overall, the advice that I have to give is just the sun will rise tomorrow and you'll find out the people that are meant to be in your life.
Yeah, and they will present themselves sometimes out of nowhere. You just have to be open and willing and honestly just brave enough to say, okay, this is the feeling that I have for the person who's supposed to hear this. And again, it's so it is tricky, but it is so beautiful. I know I just said it a few moments ago. Once you find those people that are out there, um, it just a whole new relationship is born. A whole even with people that you thought you knew for your entire life, it's just like, oh my god. There's a it's a really famous person, so this is kind of embarrassing that I don't know. But there's a quote that it's like true friendship is born when one person goes, "Oh wait, no, really, you too," and they didn't even realize that someone else was going through the same exact things. Let it go, Caleb. It's going to eat me alive that I don't know. Um, I think that is beautiful too because like I've watched growing up my parents go through different stages individually. It's like they took care of me for so long, then they didn't know if they were supposed to be my parent or my friend or both, which is cool when they figure out how to be both. And then it's like now I can tell them things that I was just like I would never tell them in the past. And then I've learned personally like, okay, this is something I'll tell my parents, or no, this is something that I can navigate on my own. Like much like you, those people are my parents that I can confide in. But I think it's very important, and I appreciate our guest Amanda Dahlman for bringing this up. You should have more than one of those people in your life if you choose to have them, because a lot of times the things you tell them have a lot of weight, especially on the people that care about you the most. So if I don't know, we'll just use me for example. I I tell people that know me will probably roll their eyes. I tell a lot of people a lot of things, even though I'm getting better at it. I tell my mom certain things. I tell my girlfriend certain things. I tell my dad certain things. I tell my brother. Like I have probably five or six people that I can think about that I tell specific things, knowing that they have the mental capacity right now to help me. And sometimes the person that I need to go to is one of my friends and they're just going to listen. They're not going to give advice. Sometimes I want advice, so I'll give my mom. Sometimes I just want to shoot the shit, so I go to my brother. Sometimes I don't know what the heck I'm doing, so I go to my dad. Like I have these specific people that I go to with specific things rather than just piling it all on one person. Do you think that's important, or do you think that you should just stick to one person?
Um, I think it probably varies with different people. I am a lot like you. I can go to my mom and shoot the shit with her when I need to, or my brother, my sisters, my dad, friends. But I think it definitely depends on the person, the situation, the people that you want to confide in. But personally, I think, thankfully, I have such a just a loving circle of people that I consider them like all my people. I know that I can go to them for absolutely anything, regardless of the matter, and I know that they'll be able to handle it. And if they can't handle it, they'll let me know, and I'll learn how to navigate that conversation.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And again, it's so powerful. Like, to anyone out there wondering what the heck to do, I just say build your community, find your people, build your circle. I mean, you deserve it. I don't even have to know you to know you deserve it, because some people that don't know me say the same thing, and that's enough for me to build my circle. But one last thing I want to get into before we round out this episode is, do you just have anything in general that you want to let people in on, that you want people to know, maybe advice, maybe something that didn't work for you? I know some guests share common practices for mental health that just genuinely don't work for them, that other people are like, oh wait, why doesn't it work? Like, is there anything in general about mental health that you want people to know about yourself?
I think just I try to tell myself this all the time, like sports do not define who I am. My level of success or a level of failure, it does not define the person that I am. So I think having that mindset, whether it's your job defining you, your sport, anything along the lines of that, it doesn't necessarily have to be your sport. But and I think trying to navigate someone's mental health is just a lot of trial and error. So give yourself a little grace and a little bit of wiggle room, and I think every single person will find the way that they're supposed to be and the people they're supposed to be around just by trial and error.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, there's not much else to be said there. So I do want to go into the last little portion of the Make Mental podcast here. It's probably my favorite minute and a half. Not that the rest of it I didn't enjoy. I just love the responses. So I will ask you the final question. Are you ready?
I'm very ready.
Now you're a little nervous. No, I'm kidding.
Okay.
Is there one person, if they make it this far in the episode, that you're just like, man, I'm thinking about you. Here's a hug from Cam. Here's a hug.
Oh my gosh. Makes me emotional. Probably just every person that, oh man, I can't like point out one person in specific. Probably just every person that has given me a pat on the back or just given me a hand to hold when I need it or helped me up when I'm down. Anyone that's really just helped me out throughout my struggles. They know who they are, so.
Yeah, I
Man,
love
you made
that.
me
That's awesome.
emotional.
So take your time, no rush. I appreciate the honest answer. I mean, we've had moms, dads, cousins, best friends, but we've never just had really anyone who's given you a hand. And again, that could be as simple as when you put on your first pair of skates and someone helped you back up, all the way to someone cooking dinner for you yesterday. Like, we don't need to know. Like you said, those people will know. So whoever you are, there's a lovely, warm thank you hug from Cam. And I'm sure she knows she'll get one back at some point. So there you have it for this episode of the Make Mental podcast with Kamryn. We appreciate you for coming on and, again, sharing what's worked for you, what hasn't worked for you, acknowledging that, I mean, it's a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of self-forgiveness. It's a lot of self-discovery, failure, but ultimately you're worth it. Like, there's really no other way to put it. It's just, you are worth it. So thank you for bringing that back up and sharing that with us once again.
Thank you so much. I've looked forward to doing this for months now, so I'm so glad I was able to do it.
Yeah, no, I got to rethink my planning process apparently so we can get people on before months. But yeah, thank you again. We will chat soon.
Thank you so much.